Okay, so we'll start. If I can just mention that this session is being given by Wolfgang, and the title is not up on the screen, so I can't read it out. If you have any questions, I will be watching the chat, so any questions, just pop them in the chat and I'll break in as you're muted. If we get to the end, which I hope we do, then I'll unmute everybody or give everybody the opportunity to unmute and ask questions. But Wolfgang, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. So we go into presentation mode. All right. So yeah, my name is Wolfgang Scherberle. I'm the Senior Product Manager in IBM IOPS portfolio for Z ChatOps and also several other products in our portfolio. This session is really about Z ChatOps. So it's called Discover Exciting Enhancements in Z ChatOps. So let's take a look at what I'm going to talk about. I'll start with a quick overview on Z ChatOps, its capabilities and so forth. Then I'll talk about some of the latest enhancements that we shipped over the last year. And that includes also a couple of demos, and I'll also take a quick look at some features that we are working on. And finally, I'll close out with talking about how to deploy and where you can find more information. Okay, so this slide represents our Z AIOps portfolio. It's a framework that we have built over the last few years that you can also read about by following the link that is on that slide. It is divided into the three capability areas: detect, decide, and act. And you can basically find all our Z AIOps products divided up into those categories on that slide. So for example, on the detect side, you see the monitoring portfolio around Omegamon, for example, the CAPM Connect, Instana for COS. On the decide side, you see also tools like the Omegamons, but also, for example, one of our new acquisitions, the IBM IntelliMagic Vision for COS. And on the act side, you see our automation portfolio. So this is around system automation, NetView, Z workload scheduler, batch resiliency, and storage automation. In the middle of this, we have a capability that is called collaborative incident remediation. And this is what we're going to focus in on this session today. So this is about connecting the different pieces in the portfolio by providing ChatOps capabilities and also web-based dashboards through Z ChatOps and through Service Management Unite. And I'm going to focus on Z ChatOps in this session. So, but let's have a quick overview on the different user experiences and different user interfaces that you typically work with when interacting with a mainframe environment and our systems management tools. So at the bottom, you have all the core products running on the platform, things like system automation and NetView providing automation capabilities and network management capabilities, a workload scheduler for the scheduling, Omegamon for monitoring, and so forth. And you typically have highly skilled subject matter experts working with these tools, administrating those tools, working with often 3270 based terminal user interfaces. On top of that, we have web user interfaces, and one that tries to connect everything together and provide a consolidated dashboard kind of user interface is IBM Service Management Unite. We have integrations with Z workload scheduler, with the Omegamons and system automation and NetView all coming together in one consolidated user interface. You can build also your own dashboards like shown here. And this is all seamlessly integrated. You can navigate from one area to the other and so forth. The target users, main target users are the operators, but actually we're also adding more and more capabilities for the administrator. For example, you can manage your automation tables your NetView automation tables also through SMU. On top of that, we have Z ChatOps. This is where we bring the tools together with the team, basically in one common place that you use anyhow on a day-by-day basis. For example, Microsoft Teams, so an enterprise chat platform that you use to communicate with your peers, with the technical team, to discuss incidents and so forth. And with Z ChatOps, you can also embed a chatbot into those discussions, into a channel, for example, where discussing incidents. And this chatbot provides access to the underlying backends. It provides access to system automation, to NetView, to OmegaMon, and so forth. And directly from your Slack or MS Teams channel, you can access that information and you can get alerted about situations right on your mainframe environment. So just a quick recap on how do you get this Z ChatOps capability and also the Service Management Unite capabilities. We have added these functions in all of our major suite offerings. So here we have the Z Service Management Suite, which is our big suite that includes all the OmegaMons and also system automation and NetView. And it also includes Service Management Unite Enterprise Edition and Z ChatOps. And likewise, we have the Service Automation Suite, which focuses more on the automation side. So this is a bundle of system automation, NetView, and workload scheduler, and also includes SMU and ChatOps. And we have the Monitoring Suite, which focuses more on the monitoring side, which bundles all the OmegaMons and of course also SMU and ChatOps. So basically all of our suites contain SMU and ChatOps. And we have a pretty new product that bundles several integration components that you can use on top of standalone OmegaMons, for example. If you don't want to have these bigger suites, you can have this C Systems Integration for Observability offering that includes, for example, SMU, ChatOps, but also some other integration components like the OmegaMon data provider, the C Common data provider, discovery pieces, and so forth. Also in the standalone product, System Automation and NetView, we include Service Management Unite. In this case, only the dashboards that are for System Automation and for NetView. So you won't get the OmegaMon dashboards in this flavor of SMU that is embedded in the standalones. On the System Automation side, we also include Z ChatOps. So that on how this is shipped. Now let's go into more the functional point of view. So what does Z ChatOps provide? So in general, as I've mentioned, it's a chatbot that you can integrate in your enterprise chat platform, like Slack or Microsoft Teams, which is most common. We also support MetaMost. The beauty of MetaMost is that you can install that on premise. It's an open source tool, very much like Slack or MS Teams that you can use for collaboration, for chatting with the teams. You have chat channels and so forth. And this can be installed locally, so you don't have to connect your mainframe to a cloud environment if you don't want to do that, which would be necessary for Teams and Slack. Z ChatOps then connects to the backends like system automation, NetView, workload scheduler through the REST APIs, and that allows it to surface that information from those tools in the chat platform. And you can use it, for example, to show alerts in Slack or Teams. So if, for example, OmegaMon discovers a situation event, you can forward that event into a chat channel to your technical team, to the application team, or however you have set this up. And then you can start collaborating in the chat channel about the incident, discuss with each other, but also use the chatbot to actually ask for domain information. For example, ask metrics from OmegaMon directly from the chat channel, or ask the status of your system automation resource directly from the chat channel without having to leave to a different tool. Everyone is always on the same page because everyone sees the same information in the chat channel. You can even take action through the chatbot, for example, restart a resource, restart a job, things like that. And you can always drill down to web-based dashboards. So for example, if you look at that screen capture in the lower left, you see this is I'm asking here the chatbot to show all the events for COS. So it lists the events coming from OmegaMon for the COS systems. And you always have clickable links here to go into more details on web-based UIs as well. So if, for example, you want to have a graphical view of the information or things like that. A pretty new addition in our latest Z ChatOps release is that you can also embed the chat window in a web-based user interface. So not only you can use it from an enterprise chat platform like Slack or Teams, you can also embed it into a web UI. This is a kind of toolkit that you can embed in any web UI that you want to offer this function. All right. So at a high level, Z ChatOps allows, of course, also to provide a kind of workflow through the tools and coordinate the work between people and tools, right? For example, the workflow could begin with an alert notification that is sent to Z ChatOps. For example, an Omegamon situation event that shows up in the chat channel. People then start to work together to discuss the incident, to use the chatbot to query more information, maybe navigate into web-based UIs like into SMU or other web UIs that you can integrate also into the chatbot, and analyze the situation, and finally find out the root cause, and essentially then even take an action through the chatbot, issue a command or restart an application or things like that. So it helps coordinating that workflow. You always have the history. You can scroll back in the chat channel to see what has been discussed and so forth. And we have actually built out several specific use cases where we demonstrate these kind of integration scenarios, as we call them, across our Z CAIOps portfolio by leveraging a Z ChatOps driven workflow. And one is shown here. Let me move through here. So this is specific to a use case that starts with an alert from Z Workload Scheduler. So imagine there's a long running job. So a job that runs longer than expected, basically. We can send that alert into Z ChatOps. So there's a built-in integration in Z Workload Scheduler to alert people through Z ChatOps. This will show up in the chat channel. People now start to investigate that, maybe drill down into the dynamic workload console to look up more information about that job, discuss with each other, possibly look up monitoring information from Omegamon in context of that alert, drill down into SMU for more details. Finally, we find out in this use case that the job is taking longer than expected because the CPU utilization of that LPAR on which the job runs is at a limit, is pretty high. So finally, we decide after discussing in the channel that we want to provide more CPU resources to that LPAR so we can actually make that change through SMU and then share that information back to the chat channel through Z ChatOps, and problem solved. So this is a kind of workflow orchestrated through Z ChatOps using various tools like Omegamon, Z Workload Scheduler, system automation, SMU in one consistent workflow. Now let's look at the functions that we provide in Z ChatOps in more details. So one that I mentioned already, a key item, is that you can use it for notifying people. And we have multiple ways of actually sending alerts to Z ChatOps, which will then be surfaced in the chat tool of your choice. And I'll talk more about that in a minute or so. With the notifications, you can specify where should that be posted, so in which channel, for example, so that you can really send this to the right set of people. Here's an example, an Omegamon alert in Z ChatOps, and I'll show you that in a live demo in a few minutes as well. So the alert appears in the chat channel. So here we have a chat channel for the technical team. The alert shows up. You have the the problem location showing like where has that alert originated. You have drill down links to get more information, to drill down into SMU, for example. And you also have context sensitive action buttons that you can use to get more details directly through the chatbot within the chat platform as well. And yeah, this is shown here. You can, for example, show more details about that LPAR, showing more in-depth metrics coming from OmegaMon directly in the channel. Next, you might want to gather more information about the environment. So for this, you can actually query the chatbot for more information. You can issue queries against system automation, against OmegaMon, against NetView, workload scheduler. You have access to log information and so forth. All through the chatbot. Here's one example, show me all systems, to list all the systems. Then you can use the context sensitive buttons to look at more details, like show the applications running on that system. Then drill down into SMU for graphical views, for example, and things like that. Here's an example to show system automation resources through the chatbot in a MS Teams channel. So I'm here in the MS Teams channel. I'm asking the chatbot to show SA resources. So the chatbot now lists the system automation resources on the environment, in the environment, sorted by severity. So you see the worst resources at the top. And then you can drill down into more details. Look, for example, at a specific resource in more details. You get the most important status information as reported by system automation. You get context sensitive actions like listing the members if it's a group, looking at the relationships, showing the requests, and you can even take action. So for example, restart or stop that application that is listed here through system automation. Another example from the OmegaMon side, you might want to list the LPARs and the corresponding performance information about the LPARs. So here I get the response back for this one LPAR that is connected here. You see the average CPU percentage, for example. You can then look at the details of that LPAR and finally even look at the top 5 CPU consuming jobs on that system by clicking that Show Jobs button. And I'll show you that in more details in the live demo as well. Here's some information about what you can get through Z Workload Scheduler. For example, you can just list the engines that are connected, list the critical jobs that are at a high risk to not finish in time based on the deadlines that you have defined. So you can do queries like that to list those critical jobs and then drill down into more details of the specific job. Of course, you could also find specific jobs by name. For example, job list status using the job name, and then you'll get that response back. You can also, as I mentioned, issue commands through the chatbot. You can even issue generically any MVS command. This goes through the NetView REST API. Of course, for these actions that could potentially also change something on the system, you have to log in using your personal user ID. So you'll get a prompt to specify your user ID and password, which then, of course, will be also verified on the backend side through RAGF, for example, that you're also actually authorized to do that action. And then you'll get the response back in the chat. We have built in many different integration possibilities that you can drill down to from the information that is displayed in the chat. So for example, as I've mentioned a couple of times, you can always drill down into SMU dashboards for in context for more information, but you can also configure other endpoints, other web UIs that you might want to launch to. For example, you can configure to launch into Splunk dashboards, yeah, to display more information in context of that specific LPAR that is shown here. So you can configure your target web UIs that you want to launch into and configure also the context that will be passed along with that. Now let's have a look at the last releases that we have shipped with Z ChatOps over the roughly last year. So 113 came out in March 23. So we have implemented quite some enhancements regarding the user experience. So for example, added some intelligent response capabilities, meaning that if you don't specify all the parameters that might be required, the chatbot will actually ask you for those. For example, if it's not clear on which system you actually want to take an action, it will ask you for the system and give you a drop-down box where you can just select the system. We have implemented the function that replies to a specific alert or a specific query can be done in a thread, so in a separate discussion thread in the chat tool, so that you don't flood basically your main channel with all the noise. You can define command aliases. So for example, instead of typing longer command line style commands, you can actually define an alias. In this example, defining an alias WS for workstation to list all the workstations of a certain connected workload scheduler engine. You could define WS, and that responds to or corresponds to workstation list status, and you can use fill-ins like $1 on a certain engine named ICWS. And then you can, from then on, just use that alias and, for example, say WS workstation name, and that will be filled into that command. We've also defined more default actions and objects so that it's just simpler to actually interact with a chatbot. You can, for example, just say system or LPAR instead of always having to type system list status to show the status of those LPARs. So we have defined some default actions and objects that simplifies the interaction with the chatbot. We've also enhanced some more integrations with other products. Now we've shipped later last year in September a fix pack on top of 1131 that allowed this, what I've already mentioned, the configurable launching context links, so that you can define your own launch points from to which you want to launch to from chatbot output. So you can configure your own web UIs, your own dashboards, and so forth. We've added the reset function for application resources to the chatbot, and also some more simplification on the UI, on the user experience. Z ChatOps 114 we shipped in last December. That was a pretty big enhancement because we have shipped two main new features that I'm going to talk about more next in the next couple of slides. One is the Kafka event support. So it's now possible to leverage Kafka event infrastructure to do the alerting to Z ChatOps. And the other big enhancement is the embedded web chat. That is a library that you can use to embed the chat capabilities into a web user interface. So let's talk about those two enhancements in more details. Enhanced event integration. So let's take a look at the various ways that you can use to send alerts to Z ChatOps. So what we have shipped from the beginning is the way to use HTTP post requests. So we have a REST API, and you can just use a simple HTTP post, send along the incident data with that HTTP post, and that will be presented in the chat channel that you have configured in Slack, in Teams, and so forth. So quite simple way of interacting with Z ChatOps and allowing to send alerts into Z ChatOps. If your application that wants to integrate has the possibility to use an HTTP post request. A new way of sending alerts into Z ChatOps is through Kafka. So more and more tools allow to post data into Kafka topics. For example, in system automation, we have the possibility through the SA info broker to send SDF messages into a Kafka topic, and there are many more tools leveraging Kafka more and more as a centralized messaging infrastructure, right, to transport events or other data from one place to another. And we're now supporting from the Z ChatOps side to listen to a topic on Kafka, and that you have possibilities to filter those and to provide mapping rules, and that will be then presented also in a chat channel in Teams or Slack or MetaMost or in web chat actually. And the third capability that we have not shipped yet, but will come soon, is the support for EIF events. So EIF events, that's the event integration facility, is a kind of old proprietary format, but that is used by a lot of products actually in our portfolio in the IBM space specifically, coming from Tivoli originally. And for example, Omegamon is able to forward events to an EIF target. System automation allows forwarding to EIF targets. And we have now implemented or are implementing actually, so that's marked as future, but will be delivered pretty soon. We have now an EIF event receiver on the Z ChatOps side that can listen also for EIF events. So that simplifies integration also, because you can just use the out-of-box EIF eventing that is offered by many of our products to send those events also into Z ChatOps. Now let's look as a sample use case where you can make use of that Kafka integration. As I've mentioned, system automation has a new SA info program component that allows to send SDF messages into Apache Kafka. So you have your Kafka environment, and you can configure now system automation to use that as an info program to forward events into a topic that you have defined. On the Z ChatOps side, you can define mapping rules and filtering rules, and then use that information to display that in Z ChatOps. So that's a pretty easy way, for example, to surface SDF events also in a chat environment through Z ChatOps. So how does that work in details? First, you need to have Kafka available. You configure that in a configuration file on the ChatOps side. You configure filtering rules on the ChatOps side, so you don't want to properly show all the events that are sent into the Kafka topic through Z ChatOps. So you can define which kind of events you want to surface in a chat tool. And you have to define mapping rules, because of course any kind of format can land in the Kafka topic. You now define which attributes is mapped to the Z ChatOps incident model in which way, and that is defined in a mapping rule file. So here you can see basically on the Z ChatOps side, you just define, okay, where's your Kafka server running, on which port, and you define to which topics you want to describe. So these are the two configuration pieces that you need to specify. And from then on, Z ChatOps listens to those topics and is able to receive those events that come from these Kafka topics. Next, you can configure your filtering rules. If you don't want to display all of those messages in Z ChatOps, then you can define filter rules. It's quite comprehensive set of possibilities that you can use here. And one example is shown here. So if you want to, for example, only show those Kafka events in Z ChatOps that have a priority above 500, priority below 1000, and source matches source A, and ID equals I001, and so forth. You can all define all these kind of rules. This would look like that on the left side. So you can define a priority filter greater or equal than 500, less than 1000. The source should be source A asterisk. The ID either I001 or A asterisk 5. So you can build basically any filter that you like in this way. Next, you define mapping rules. So the Z ChatOps has a common incident data model that it understands, that it uses to display alerts in the enterprise chat tool. Possibly, and most likely, the event that is in the Kafka topic has a different format. So you have to define how to map from Kafka to the Z ChatOps model. This is defined in a mapping rules file. And here's one example how that looks like. On the left side, you see the Kafka event data. And the example here is actually from an SDF message that is sent from system automation through the SA info broker into that Kafka topic. You see the various values, and now you want to map that to the corresponding Z ChatOps model, and this is done in the way as you have seen here in the middle piece of the mapping file. So you define, for example, the summary of the alert information comes from the field info. So info is a field here in the Kafka data, info EIP underscore 12, for example. You define that the description that should be shown in the alert on the ChatOps side comes from the data array element 0. So here you have a data element with a message from SDF that you map this to. Priority is mapped to priority, and so forth. So this is how you define those mapping rules, and that finally end up in being able to display that alert in a chat channel, in Teams, in Slack, in Mattermost, or even in the web chat, as shown here. So now let's have just a quick look on a use case where you would want to use the EIF integration that we are currently building. So for example, on the Omegamon side, it's very easy to forward situation events to an EIF target. You just go into the situation editor on your Tivoli Enterprise portal, for example. You select the situation event, and there's a tab called EIF. And this is where you actually define that this situation event is to be forwarded to a EIF target, to an EIF receiver. So you can just select your Z ChatOps server as an EIF target, and that's all that you have to do, basically. You can then also, like with Kafka, define mapping rules and filtering rules for any EIF events that are received by Z ChatOps. But it's a very simple integration in this example from Omegamon. In the same way, you can define EIF targets in system automation or in a similar way. And that will, at the end, result into, for example, the Omegamon situation event to show up in the chat channel through Z ChatOps. All right, now let's do a little bit of a live demo just to show you some of the use cases that you can use from an incident management point of view with our Z ChatOps integration. So here we have a channel called Guest Z ChatOps demo. Assume this is the channel from the technical team where they discuss incidents that they use for alerting. Here you see, for example, an alert actually from the Z Anomaly Analytics product discovering an anomaly, but actually this is not the use case that I wanted to show. But first of all, this channel contains the chatbot, and you can also just interact with the chatbot. For example, issue the help command to list all the commands that are available with the chatbot to query information, for example, about your KICS regions, about your LPARs, your DB2 instances, your network. This is all information coming from Omegamon. Then we have several commands around system automation that you can use to look at the status of your system automation resources, for example. We have NetView information, and we have information coming from the Z workload scheduler. For example, look at job information, look at the workstations, critical jobs, and so forth. Now let's start the scenario with actually an event. And an event from Omegamon that has now shown up. So you can see the channel is informed about a new issue from IBM Omegamon, a high CPU detected on a certain LPAR. If I have, so I'm using Slack here. So if I have my Slack application on my smartphone, I will also get corresponding push notifications, for example. So everyone that is in this channel gets informed about that situation. And you can now start to work on this as a team. So it's all about collaboration and also all about getting the information really quickly in this collaborative space. So this event contains additional information like on which system has that situation occurred. You can also, of course, drill down into directly into SMU dashboards from that alert, or you can just start, for example, by looking at more details. For example, this KOSP4B LPAR, we might just want to gather a little bit more information about that. Just simply select that action. The chatbot will respond in a thread. So here on the side, you can now see what the chatbot responds. On my request to show more details on the KOSP4B system. And this is what the chatbot has responded. So it provides even more details coming from OmegaMon about the metrics of that LPAR. You see an NQ weight situation, for example. You see the IO rate, the average CPU percentage, which is pretty high, and more information. Yeah. Now I could also again drill down into corresponding web UIs. Here we have, for example, configured, of course, the SMU dashboard, but you could also launch into the ICSME workspace or into the CWin, so the workload interaction navigator, or in an ELK dashboard, actually. So this is configurable, right? And you can pass in context information to where you want to launch. But let's stay for a moment still on the ChatOps side. I can just click the Show Jobs button to list, for example, all the jobs that are running on that system, sorted by CPU consumption. So at the top, you see actually there's a job name, CNM job 1, that uses up a lot of CPU. I could now drill down into the SMU dashboard to look at more details. For example, that would launch to here. And you see the same information, the CNM job 1 using up a lot of CPU here. You see, again, more metrics, more performance information about that LPAR directly coming from OmegaMon. We could do some analysis here on the SMU side, maybe, for example, look at that CNM job 1 in more details, like the CPU usage over the last 1 hour. That is at a constant high level here for that address space. So you can look at more information here on the SMU side and do the analysis, or of course just discuss with the team in the chat channel, get more information directly through the chatbot or through other tools. I could now navigate here to the corresponding system automation resource that is managing that CNM job 1 address space. So manage automated resource takes me to that corresponding CNM job 1 application. So we're now launching from an OmegaMon view to a system automation view, because we know that this is actually an address space that is automated by system automation. Should be coming. Yeah, here it is. So we have now launched into the system automation view, directly navigated to that CNM job 1 application that has been defined in the system automation policy. I see here the graphical view also. I see from a system automation point of view, it's running, it's active, but we saw from the OmegaMon side that it's actually performing not well. It uses a lot of CPU, so might be caught in some CPU loop or a loop in the program or whatever. I could now stop that through system automation from SMU, but let's now maybe just for a moment go back to the Z ChatOps side. Maybe I've been discussing that with the team. Looks like CNM job 1 uses high CPU. Should I stop it? Whatever. Yeah, just discuss with the team on what should be the right next action. And I could even just use the chatbot to look at that CNM job 1 application in more details. from a system automation point of view. Yeah, I also see that CNM Job 1 application now. So the same information that I just saw in SMU, but also directly through the chatbot. And even through the chatbot, I can look at more details. Maybe I want to look at the details of that CNM Job 1 application. Again, that will be presented in a separate thread so that it's all arranged in a good way, in a structured way. So you see the CNM Job 1 application here with all the details. And I can now even send a request from here, for example, to stop that. That's CNM Job 1. I could add some more options here, even through the chatbot. So for example, maybe I want to specify like a force stop or a higher priority and input some comments, stop through chatbot or whatever, and click submit. I've already stored my password, otherwise I would have been prompted for my user ID and password. So we have now requested to stop that CNM Job 1 application through the chatbot, which passes that request to system automation, and system automation will stop that application. I could now just verify the status of that CNM Job 1 application by clicking that button, and the chatbot will pull that information from system automation, and you can see it's actually now unavailable. It has been stopped successfully. I can also look at the request. I see my stop request. I see my comment that I've entered previously. So that's all also available through the chatbot directly. Now I could verify, of course. So is my CPU consumption better now on the LPAR? Okay, I can see actually the average CPU percentage went down. It's now at 2%, so that looks pretty good. I can look at more details of that specific LPAR again. So yeah, CPU percentage is low. I still have that issue with some NQs that are waiting, but my primary attempt here was to lower the CPU consumption. If I look at the jobs running on that system, I actually now see, okay, there's no more a high CPU consumer on that system. So all this coordinates through ChatOps, always with the possibility to drill down into web UIs as well, of course, for graphical views and so forth, for more details. But then, yeah, you can use that very, very nicely also to just communicate with the team, and everyone is always on the same page, right? Because you can scroll back in history and you can find out, okay, why have I actually stopped that based on the discussions and so. Okay, let me go back to the presentation. Let me just quickly talk about the web embedded chat as well. So that's a new feature that we have implemented, or that we provide with the latest Z ChatOps release. So the goal here is to provide also the possibility to have this kind of chat bot embedded in web UIs, for example, in Service Management Unite. That's actually something that we are currently working on, to provide this web chat also directly embedded on the dashboards in SMU. But you can also just use that library that we provide with Z ChatOps to embed that in basically any web UI that your operations team is working with. And basically this looks like this. You get this chatbot icon embedded in your web UI. You can select that icon to open a web window that you can then use to actually chat with the chatbot. You can use the exact same commands that I've just demonstrated in Slack. For example, look at the automation domains. You have the possibility to use a dark theme or light theme by just clicking that button, depending on how your web UI looks like, basically. You can resize that window. You can move that around, of course. And how does that work in general? So it's a library, it's a package that we ship. So you have to embed that into your own web application if you want to make use of that. And this describes basically the steps on how to do that. It's a JavaScript library that you import into your HTML file, or if you have a JavaScript-based web UI, you import that into your JavaScript file. You append the web component into the in the node where you want that little chat icon to appear, and then you initialize that window, and your you're ready to go. You basically redeploy your web application and make use of that. I have here a pre-recorded demo of how that looks like if it's just embedded into a very simple pure HTML file. Let me just play that. So yeah, this is just a plain HTML file that has just a few capabilities to change how that background looks like. You have the chat icon that you can open. You can move that around, drag that around, resize that. You can issue all your chatbot commands directly here in that web chat window. Close that, open it, change the theme, black, dark, white background, and yeah, and then you can just interact with it like you were in your enterprise chat tool, but it's now embedded in your web application. And you can even use that to drive your web UI. So you can configure that based on results that are shown in the chat window, as you see here, to actually open certain dashboards in the web UI if you want. So that's an option that you can do. For example, if you're listing like here, the system automation resources, you could envision that at the same time, the corresponding web user interface is displayed. The corresponding dashboard is displayed as well in the background. So this is how this web chatting looks like. Stop here and move on. Now let's talk a little bit about some future items. Not going into too much details, but just that you see what we are looking at, that we are potentially working on at. So I already mentioned one of our plans is to embed that web embedded chat window into SMU so that you have this capability to interact with the chatbot also directly at your fingertips from SMU dashboards. Another key item that we want to accomplish with the chatbot is that you can communicate with it in natural language. As you have seen in my demo, it's using currently well-defined commands and a kind of command line style syntax to interact with the backends. We want to get to a way that you can just use natural English language, English sentences, basically to interact with the chatbot. For example, just ask the chatbot, how is my KICS region AOXY doing? And that is translated to the corresponding chatbot command. We also want to add actually more AI capabilities into the chatbot, providing more assistant kind of functionality that can give you advice on what, for example, certain alerts mean, or give you recommendations on what to do next, all based on generative AI capabilities. And yeah, another key item that we are currently working on is integrating with incident management tools like ServiceNow, so that you can, for example, directly open a ServiceNow ticket while working with an alert that comes from Z ChatOps, or while discussing certain issues in a chat channel. Or you could also just look for related incident tickets. So envision that a certain Omega-Mon alert reports a high CPU situation that we have just seen in the live demo. Then you might want to just check, okay, is there a ServiceNow ticket that has been already opened for that situation, and look at the details there and maybe append some information there and things like that. So these are some of the key roadmap items for Z ChatOps that the team is currently working on. And now let's take a look.
Wolfgang, it's Weston. There is a question in the chat.
Okay.
If you want to answer it now, I'll wait until you finish the presentation. It's up to you.
Let me just take a look at the chat. Okay, so what is the high-level setup required on COS for ChatOps? A start task and customize it to connect to Teams Slack. Yes, I'm actually going to talk about that a little bit in the next couple of slides, and I can elaborate on that. And how is the security managed is the second question. So, for example, only few teams might need to have access to restart address spaces as part of security setup within Z ChatOps, or instead just tag to the existing RAGF environment. So regarding the security, it's so it's several levels of security. So let's start at the beginning, at the chat side, basically. So first of all, you only add that chatbot to those groups or to those channels where where you have the need to see that information, right? So you can restrict that by using private channels, and of course only the people that need to have access to that information will be invited to those channels and have access to that chatbot. So that's the first level of security, let's say. And then of course the second level is always covered on the backend side. So on the RAGF side, you have only you can only do those actions for which you are actually authorized with your personal user. So as I've mentioned, so for commands that are actually taken on the MVS systems, you have to specify your user ID and password, and that will be checked against RAGF, where you have all the authorization settings and authentication settings in place. So these are the two main levels of security that are available right now. We could, of course, also think about more role concepts, like already you would only see certain actions based on a certain role. That is currently not available, but that's certainly something that we could also envision going forward. So that for the security. And regarding the setup, let's just look at this in more details. So the Z ChatOps server is one piece that you need to install, and that runs on a Linux-based system. But we also support, we also have that available as a Docker container. So you can also deploy that into container environments. And that includes also CCX, the C container extension. So you can also deploy that container into a CCX environment, which basically means that you can even have that running under as a COS address space. So if you don't want to set up a Linux system, Linux on C, Linux on X, it both works. You could also deploy it under CCX. So that's the core piece that you need. This Z ChatOps server, and it's a very lightweight server actually. Then you you typically also have the SMU server to which you connect this to, because most of the information coming from system automation and coming from Omegamon is actually leveraging the SMU REST API to get access to that information. Except for the C workload scheduler REST API, which is used directly by the Z ChatOps server. And then so that's the direction to the backend side. On the front end side, you have the chatbot that you deploy into Microsoft Teams or Slack and so forth. And that you just define on the Slack or MS Teams side and connect it to the Z ChatOps server. So this is the side, it's basically here, the chat tool server. If it's running in the cloud, which is the case for MS Teams, for example, you need to open up this specific IP and port of the Z ChatOps server to your Teams environment. So this requires some collaboration with the network team to open up that port, basically. If you don't want to do that, the other option is to deploy that chat tool server on premise. And for that, for example, Mattermost is available that can be deployed on premise as well. So those are the different pieces that you need to set up and deploy. I hope that answered the question around what's needed. And to get access to the backends, it just uses the available REST APIs. So REST API from system automation, from NetView workload scheduler, right? Okay. This picture actually shows the deployment option of running it in CCX. So you can have run all those containerized components that we have in our various products also deploy on CCX to have everything running on COS. That includes, for example, Z ChatOps, but also SMU. For example, if you want to make use of the dynamic workload console, the web UI for the Z workload scheduler product, this is also available as a container. You can deploy all of those in CCX as well. This is just some more information on how to get Z ChatOps and also SMU. So we have download portals. that you get access to by if you have one of those products or suites, right? So you find the access information as part of your part of the product material that you order through ShopC. So you need an access key and your basically your IBM customer ID and password to access those download portals, and then you can just download the latest version of the ChatOps and also Service Management Unite. Also, we have the Docker container available directly in ShopC, but the latest versions you can always get through the download portals. We also have Z trial environments available. If you just want to play around with it without deploying it into your environment, you can make use of those cloud-hosted Z trial environments. You just register for the trial, and then you get, I think, 3 days of an environment that you can use to play around, and you get some use cases integrated. So also a nice way of experimenting with ChatOps, also with SMU. And here are also just some additional resources with videos that show some demos of how you use ChatOps. Also, I have listed here some SMU videos. And even more links with more details, like to the documentation, to even more videos, to the trial environments, to the product pages. I also encourage you to join our AIOps and IBMC community. It's a good place where we publish blogs on a regular basis with news about the products. This is where we publish videos and so forth. Okay, and this with that, I'm at the end of my session, just in time. I encourage you, of course, also to provide the session feedback here through this QR code and through the feedback form that you can access here through this URL. Are there any remaining questions?
So I'm going to, there we go. I've given everybody the opportunity to unmute themselves if they would like to ask Wolfgang any questions directly. And barring that, thank you, Wolfgang, for the session. But over to the crowd.
Yeah, I would just like to say it was a good set of information from Wolfgang about Z ChatOps. It is quite a new product for me to know about, and it is informative. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was a pleasure to present this, and yeah, if anyone has more questions after the session, of course, just feel free to reach out to me. The presentation is uploaded. You'll find my email address there, and just reach out to me.
Okay, so
All right.
thank you, Wolfgang, and thank you everyone for attending.